Hey, welcome to the June Bang Forum. I've got 4 minutes after, so we are going to go ahead and get started today. Hopefully you're in the right place. I think you are, because this is where the fun is at. Again, this is the June Bang Forum. Before we get started and I hand it over to our speaker, we just wanted to give another request out to any of you that have been thinking about joining the planning team for this group and for these forums and the newsletters that we send out and all of those things. If you are interested in volunteering some of your time and or if your boss will let you use some of your work time to further the great work that us business analysts are doing across the state and the development that we do together here in these forums and the networking that takes place here, then we would love to have additional members on our planning team. We have had a few members that have had to back off on their involvement volunteering with us recently, and so we've got some role and some responsibility gaps that we're looking to fill. So please think about that. If you're interested, you can email our Bang inbox and we can get the process started of getting you onboarded and getting you plugged in with our team. And our email will be on the last slide at the end of the forum, so you can send that to us if you're interested. So please consider it. We'd love to have you guys all as part of our planning team. And even if you don't want to be a full-on member of the planning team, but maybe you have a passion for writing some articles for the newsletter or giving us some information about some tools and things that we could put in our newsletters or something like that, even if it's just kind of micro volunteering, please reach out to us and let us know of your interest and we can get you involved and let you help us out. That'd be great. Okay, we've got Mark Freed here today to talk to us about IT service management. Mark has a great history, great resume there. I'm not going to read his bio to you all, but I'm excited to hear from Mark about how IT service management can help us bring ourselves closer to the customer and to IT. So, without waiting too much longer, Mark, if you're ready, you can go ahead and take on the presentation and go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Let me share my screen. Excellent. If you see me looking in this direction, so I'm looking over at the chat and seeing if people's hands are up. So good afternoon. My name is Mark Freed. I am currently the IT Service Management Maturation Director at the Office of Information Services, and my big project that I'm working on right now is a complete transition of an IT service management platform from an old 15-year-old platform to a brand new in the cloud serviceability and doing a maturation and transformation of service management. And I'm really pleased to be here with you today. And please feel free to stop and ask questions or put something in the chat. I'll be watching that as we go through that. Let me get there. So there we go. So today what we're really going to kind of cover is I wanted to try and look at how ITSM and the business analysis analyst practice kind of brings us all together. Because if we're doing a really good job, whether it's IT or we're enabling business process. I really don't believe there's such thing as an IT project. There are business projects that utilize IT to accomplish business objectives. And so I want to try and help us pull that together and see how we work together, how we can unify it, and how the ITSM tool that you might not be thinking about, how it could be useful to you, could be useful to you in so many different ways, regardless of who you are if you touch IT in any direction. So far, so good. Anything that I have on the what we'll cover that somebody doesn't see that they really wanted me to cover? And if you think of something as we're going through it, make sure to ask, please. So I thought we'd start with a little definition of two things, really. What is IT service management? And IT service management really is everything we do within an IT service. If it touches an IT service, how do we meet the objective of that business, whether a private or public sector? But what I thought was really interesting, I took the business analysis definition from the Bang website and the business analysis from the ITIL definition. How many of you know what ITIL is? Or maybe I should ask, put your hand up if you don't know what ITIL is. Got at least, okay. Got it. Just trying to get an idea. So ITIL stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. The term infrastructure comes out of Great Britain, so it means a dictionary, and it is a framework to give us a common lexicon as we talk about IT services. So if I say incident as an IT person, and I'm using the ITIL definition, I know exactly what the definition of an incident is versus what a problem is, or what a request is, or what fit for purpose, fit for service is. So those are defined definitions, and ITIL gives us that common lexicon or common language. What's really interesting here is you'll see, as I've highlighted, the two definitions are very, very close, if not almost identical to each other with slightly different words. It's really about identifying business needs and creating a solution that works for the business. Yes? When we start to look at ITSM as a big picture item, what does ITSM really encompass? So I like to include this picture because very often it kind of gets missed. We sometimes think of ITSM as just being change management, configuration management, knowledge management, service requests. But when you think about how it interacts, notice that it interacts with every part of the decision-making structure within an organization. It feeds information in and out. So when I think of ITSM, what I try to help people understand is an ITSM tool is not a ticketing tool. Ticketing is a mechanism to capture work and capture data so that it can be used in these different portfolios for strategic, tactical, and operational decisions. It starts to aggregate that data that you need for those types of decision making, and that typically is done by your executive groups in the service portfolio. So everything that our organizations do should be contained somewhere in the service portfolio. Let me pause for a moment and see if there's some questions there, because this can be an interesting place for people to ask questions about how does it interact, or why is ITSM the way that we look at it this holistically. Thoughts? Questions? Everybody's good so far? Thumbs up if this is good. Hands up if you need me to modify where I'm going, because I can modify in a moment. It's hard when you don't see people's faces, right? I'm so used to being in a classroom and you can see if people are getting it, not getting it. So that's why I will ask for input like thumbs up, hands up. I think another really important thing that we want to focus on when we think about the business solution, and this is true of IT, sometimes we forget about this when we're designing IT systems. We absolutely need to focus on a human-centered design. And when we start to talk about human-centered design, it's about the experience. I have a very good friend in Australia who is one of the leading professionals in the world around human-centered design. She actually runs a company and training around that whole body of knowledge, certification around human-centered design. And she would tell us that there are four major things to think about. Real people are always at the core. Forget about what the technology does. Does it do what the people need it to do? Is it tailored to meet the user? Does it honestly focus on that they're going to feel a good experience out of using whatever we've created? And did it really solve the right problem? Right? Trying to get in and saying, I need to report an incident, but not having a good, easy way to do it or not getting it to the right people doesn't solve the right problem. Sending back feedback that this isn't working correctly for something different, and it goes through a whole big chain before somebody can actually act on it to get you what you need, doesn't solve the right problem. So we really want to think about the human in the center of everything we're doing. I think this is true in IT, and it's definitely true in the exercises I've done from a business side. Any questions? Another thing that I think is really, if you have not seen this before, I'm going to give you a PDF of this so you can use this. These are the ITIL guiding principles, and it brings it into 7 guiding principles. And when we say guiding principles, we mean things that you could universally use. I will tell you that since seeing these, I have adopted these into my everyday life. I use them in just about everything I keep thinking about. So what are we going to do? I'm focusing on the value. Are we really bringing the value of what we're doing? If I'm spending time to help you, am I providing you the value? If I'm designing a system, is it going to provide the value? It's all about the value stream. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Where are we today? And start there. Moving iteratively, saying, okay, where am I? What do I want to do, right? Doing that gap analysis and saying, what do I need to provide that's different? And then doing it in iterations. I usually remind people, don't try to eat the whole elephant. The way we eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And a lot of our projects look that way, and we can see an end state, but you might not be able to get there right away. And change is systemic, especially if what you're doing requires a cultural change. Systemic change is typically considered a timeline of 2 to 3 years to make a true systemic change in culture. And almost everything we do in project is going to end up with some form of change in culture, unless it's just a minor continuous improvement effort. Does everybody kind of agree with me on that? Or think I'm just totally out to lunch? Thumbs up if you think I'm right. Hands up if I'm out to lunch. Smiley faces if you want me to get up and tap dance. I'm not going to do it. You got to get the feedback. We've also got to collaborate, right? The more visibility you give to the people who are going to be your impacted parties, the more you get their participation as you're going through it, the better the product is going to be, right? And I'm talking about both from an ITSM and a business analyst perspective. They are the same here. We have to be doing the same things. The only difference is what are the tools that we might be using, because you don't necessarily have to use an IT tool to be able to do the business analysis, right? You could decide it's all going to be a manual paperwork process, or it's going to be an eyes-on, hands-touch process, but it's not technology. The process of what we're going to do for an IT project or a non-IT project is pretty much the same. We're just using a different set of tools. On top of that, we have to teach people to think more holistically, right? Very often we end up getting a little siloed and we get a little tunnel visioned and we don't always think about the unintended consequences. I originally worked, well, one of my initial places that I worked was in the nuclear Navy. And they teach us to think with a what if mentality and always think to the worst possible result. So I've got a nuclear reactor, I'm building it, and I have a containment dome around it. What if an earthquake hits? What if an airplane hits at the same time an earthquake hits? What if an earthquake hits at the same time there's a tornado and the airplane hits? See how I'm making it worse and worse and worse and thinking about contingencies, so that when I start to think about how strong does that dome have to be, I've thought about worst case scenario and then honed it, very similar to a blue sky exercise, and then honing it into the reality of what is the cost benefit analysis of that project. This is the one that I usually really harp on for people, is keep it simple, keep it practical. A lot of times we want to make things too complex. Can I do it with a single button click? Can I do it simply? Or do I really need to create a large, complex monstrosity with a lot of automation? Or can I create simple automation and then tie them together? And that goes right into the very last piece of the guiding principle, which is we're not always able to get more people, which means we need to optimize and automate. And automation is that force enabler that is going to let us say, okay, I don't need someone to redirect a ticket or do an approval or send an email for an approval, because I can automate that. And therefore I can use those people time into something that I need people time in versus administrative time in. Kind of makes sense why these all work together and how you can utilize them in just about anything. I suggest they're really good guiding principles, and I really do enjoy using them on every asset of my life. Thoughts, questions? Still going good. Thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. So how about this? We're all going to run into this, and this comes actually from a slide from a different presentation that I did, and I really wanted to bring this out because I'm seeing this a lot in a lot of the different groups that I'm working with, is homonyms. Let's use the concept of service. Term service and service, the same word in spelling, can mean two different things. We can even go so far as say there's a third homonym, but I wanted to keep it fairly simple. So when we start talking about services, the question can really become, what is that service? So is it a combination of people, technology, and processes? So is it like making your latte and the service is the latte creation? That's really kind of more like a noun. It's a service. And then that same word service is the act of creating value of somebody, of providing them that latte or providing them the snack and the latte, and how do we bust their table and everything that goes around. And the reason I use food metaphors is because it's a common language that all of us deal with. This can be one of the most confusing things that we run into, especially on IT projects or business projects with an IT component, because the term service can be used in so many different ways. And we have to be careful as we look at building different products. Do we have that terminology locked down enough so that when we're talking to each other and saying, I'm doing this on this piece of the product, we've defined that enough so that we are not confused in our communications. Homonyms can be a really large problem. I've seen that in my business world side, and I've seen it in my IT side. Anybody have a good story on homonyms they want to share? You're a quiet group. I'll keep going. Let's look at the service value system. How many of you have been exposed to the lean system, House of Lean, House of Kanban, anything around lean processes? Couple. Okay. This may look somewhat familiar. The Axelos and PeopleCert, who generate the ITIL certifications and ITIL guidelines and books for that framework, they have overlaid in this current version Toyota Lean into IT, saying we need to stop thinking about IT as a series of processes. IT is designed to deliver service value. And so what we've got right here in this picture is literally right out of the ITIL books, the service value system. You'll notice the guiding principle is right here. It talks about you need to have governance. And then you've got the practices. Everything we do, business analysis is a practice, incident management is a practice, change management is a practice, knowledge management is a practice. And so it starts to say to us as practitioners in the IT world, or doing anything with IT, we don't want to be siloed, but we can have specialties. So you might be really good at 2, 3, 4 practices. You might have a specialty in customer relationship management as a practice, and maybe but not in incident management as a practice. So you bring the people together who are your SMEs, your subject matter experts in the different practices, and allow as broad a perspective as possible to learn, but depend on those SMEs to actually allow you to create that service value chain. And wrapping around that far side is the continual improvement model. So all of that starts with opportunity and demand, moves into this octagon, or sorry, that's a hexagon, right? And then the whole goal is to provide value. If we zoom into the service value chain, you can see what it takes to actually create it, where we start with that same demand. This is not linear. It can move all over the place as you determine your value stream. So if we start thinking about it from, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because we could spend a whole we could spend 4 days just talking about how to value chain. But think about it this way, you know what the customer is asking for from a value perspective and the demand perspective. What is the outcome? And they have a demand for that outcome. How are we going to do that? We're going to engage with people. We're going to plan. We might move to design and transition. We might re-engage. We might say, we need to go back to make a decision on obtain or build. Once we make that decision, we might need to go back to design and transition. Once we make a decision within these items, we might need to go back to planning to really get all the milestones and tasks put together, and then re-engage to make sure it's going to meet that value, and then start to work back again through the different parts to get to deliver and support. Does that kind of make sense? This is not linear. It can move all over the place as you're doing it, but it's the big building blocks that we're looking at as you start to think about what do you need to do to build a product. Thumbs up if everyone's getting it. Hands up if I've lost anybody. Is this going along with the things that you have already done or thought, and it's in alignment with where you are thinking you want to go? Or am I presenting to you completely brand new information and a different point of view? As you think about it, if you would, jot that down and chat a little bit as you get an answer to that. You don't necessarily have to just respond out loud. Next, let's take a look from the ITIL model. How do they look at the participation of a business analyst? And again, this comes directly from an ITIL book. And what it basically shows is the level of engagement in each of these different pieces in the typical ITIL framework of the business analysis stream. You will notice that there is no place that you're not active as a business analyst. It's a little bit lower typically because most of the business analysis work to get everything done is usually in these areas here around the planning, engagement, creating the business requirements to figure out how do we plan it, or what are we going to do, and the obtain and build, or what does the design need to look like to translate what the business is wanting to a group of technicians who go, I don't get what the business wants. And then you're trying to decipher it for them. And then typically your technical groups are actually creating it, delivering it, and then supporting it to provide that value. Does this make sense? Thank you, Julie. You guys are making this very easy on me. Usually I get a lot of questions. ITSM BA workflows. Again, this comes out of ITIL to show, and what I'm trying to show you is how aligned ITIL is with the business analysis practice that you may have done outside of ITIL. ITIL did not really try to create anything new. It just tried to ensure that people working in an IT structure were able to work together in the best communication possible. So in here, I think you'll agree that I get new requirements or I get new opportunities, right? We start looking at, okay, what's our analysis based on what the information is that we're getting from the people who would be the users and other stakeholders or impacted parties. We then start to design and identify solutions, determine what solutions are right, what's it going to take to deliver that, and then basically we get into, once it's done, assessing the value that is out of it and then repeating that process over and over again. This is not designed to be at the detail level. This is really high level. What Axelos tries to do, or ITIL tries to do, is give you a framework, not tell you exactly how you're going to work. So there might be 10 steps here, and we can think of all the different things we need to do to actually get that information to say we're ready to move beyond just an analysis of should we. And then the next phase might be build or buy. So we need to start looking at the options, right? And then from there, we might be going, okay, great. Now what do we need to provide over to the technical teams that are creating it or building it? And the reason I say creating or building is because think about it that it doesn't always have to be IT. What if you need a building or an enclosure or a set of rooms for a particular requirement, such as you're doing something with federal tax information, so you need a specialized secured room. That might have to be part of the plan of building out that solution. And then what do you need to measure it, monitor it, and say, did you get the value? And what is the customer feeling about it? Did we deliver that value to them? And does it continue to deliver value as they're using whatever product we just created? Yes? No? Let's talk about how you can use other practices to do business analysis that you may not have thought about using. And please feel free to say, Mark, that's not kind of how I think it would be utilized. So if you're doing business analysis, project management, anything that has to do with people, the first thing we have to realize is we all need to be good or proficient at customer relationship management. So that is an ITIL practice. It is an ITSM practice. We all use it. The question might be, how do you integrate it? So as you start thinking about how you might use customer relationship management from an ITSM product or just in your own practice, what do we really need to think about? We need to think about, how are we treating the customer? Do we have the right information? Do we really understand the customer? I have been into multiple companies where you ask the company, who is your customer? And they go, teenagers. Great. Teenagers are your customer. That's it? That's all you know about your customer, they're teenagers? Or they're book aficionados? If that's all you know, you don't know your customer yet. So what do we know about our customer? Do we understand their wants, needs, motivations, emotional impact triggers? What do we know? Because we want to build, again, that human-centered space and that human-centered product. Understanding a little bit isn't enough. I had a business partner who used to just say to companies, that's not enough. Tell me where you're getting that data. Where'd you get the data? Where'd you get the data? How did you get it? Right to the point that for that particular company, we were able to work in and get information from our customers that we were actually able to archetype our customers. From the archetype, we actually on the website designed ways so it knew your archetype. And you know how you're getting ads now on your websites based on who and what you already do? Think of us doing this in 1994. We archetyped it, and then all of our messaging was archetyped based upon the customer. So if you were a person who liked techie tools, everything you got from the company was going to come out about techie tools. If you liked clothing, then everything you got basically focused on fashion. If you liked knowledge, it all focused on knowledge. So we had all these 12 icon types or archetypes, and everything was focused so we understood. And as we were building different products for them, we actually had pictures of the archetype, real pictures of people that gave a signature to use. We converted them to line art pictures in the colors of the walls that were in the conference room and put them up so as people were designing, they could always say, does it meet that person's need? Does it meet that person's need? And sometimes we'd just be looking at a picture of that person and go, that's not going to meet that person's need. We need to do something about that. So that customer relationship is more than just how you interact, it's understanding your customer. Does that make sense to everybody? Easy to say, not as easy to do. Almost everything we do when it comes to trying to implement a solution with IT is going to need some form of project management. It doesn't always need something like StageGate. It might not always need to use a large waterfall, agile, PERT, whichever mechanism you need. But the principles of project management are essential to go from point A to point B in any continual improvement matter. It gives us the structure to understand our timeline, right? to really say, what do I need to get accomplished? When do I need it? Do I have a critical path that I need to follow? What are my precedents that I need to finish first before I can do something next? So whether or not you're going to use formal project management is an essential skill for everybody who is going to be doing this type of work. That doesn't mean all of us need to be PMPs, but we do have to have a basic understanding of how to do a project at a smaller scale. And we leave for the bigger scale projects that require a lot more of oversight and governance. That's where you start to look at bringing in a project manager to ensure that we've got the right skill sets to assist in all of what's needed when you get into that type of project. Problem management. Problem management can be really a great place for business analysis. Does anybody know what problem management actually is in the IT service management world? Someone want to take a guess? No, huh? Okay. So I'll keep going. When we start to think about troubleshooting, supporting internal customers. Let's go. I get where people are coming from, but here's what we think of it when we think about it from an IT perspective. An incident is not a problem. So something stops working, it's an incident. But an incident itself is not a problem. So a problem is when I can see that something that is occurring is reoccurring over time, or I can't restore something to the way I believe it needs to operate. So great example of a problem management is, let's say that every day at 3 o'clock, we notice that a server basically uses 90% of its resources for an hour and then stops using that amount of resource. It never creates a disruption, but it just overutilizes its resource. Well, in this case, we're going to call that a problem because we noted that we have something that is abnormal. We want to fix it, so we need to do investigation to say, well, why is it consuming that amount of resource? And then what can we do to fix it, even though we haven't had an incident and nobody even knows that there's another issue with it other than those who've identified the problem. One of the beauties of problem management is it's not restricted just to IT. So let's say that you're using problem management from a business analyst perspective, and you're saying, I wonder how many times a person is having a problem with this workflow or value stream, and we've captured it somewhere in the IT service management data set, and you start looking at it and say, I see that what we thought would take an hour to get something accomplished is taking 2 weeks. Then we can start looking at the process to say, is there a process improvement for the business outcome? Because the expectation of what we thought we'd be able to deliver is nowhere close to what we thought we are delivering. So that's a form of proactive problem management. Let me pause a moment and give people a chance to think about that and ask any questions. Okay. So then we look at release management. If you are building or you are part of the building of an IT product or a product that includes IT, release management is basically, it's actually very much like project management. It uses the same body of knowledge, but it says, now I need to think of all the things I need to get whatever iteration I'm in to being live. So I'm going to account for what's my planning phase. What prerequisites do I need to build the actual IT product? And in the ITSM world, the word release means makes available to the customer to use. So I can deploy it. So I can take a piece of software and deploy it onto a server. and not make it available, then that piece of software would be called deployed but non-released. And the release management is everything it takes from the planning through the change management process to the point where we are saying it is live for the customer use. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense. Hands up if I've got anybody confused, please. Cool. Knowledge management, think about it, and I hope you're seeing how this all kind of ties together. So in your ITSM tool, you might also have a knowledge management. If you're using one of the bigger ones, it should have it. And now you're able to take your documentation, how-to documents for your customer, how-to documents for your technicians, how-to documents for yourself, known issues, known bugs, known problems, and document all of that so that it is aggregated to a space that when you start going, I am working on, let's say, system ABC. You start looking for issues with ABC or knowledge information on ABC, you're going to find it all in one giant repository. This really helps when you're looking at it from a perspective saying, I know I need to build a product. It's going to replace this product. What problems did I have that I can, or what knowledge issues did I have with that product, and bring that in before I even start building the product, or as I'm building the product, or as I'm designing the product. I hope that makes sense. So it can act as a repository. Depending on how the knowledge base is set up, depends on how you're doing it. At OIS, what we're setting up in this new tool is we have two collections. We have an internal collection and an external collection. If it's external, it's customer facing. And so those documents are written specifically for the customer base in the agency. Plain language, simple, and to help them do the work they need to do, possibly even intercept an incident with self-service. Our internal collection are technical documents that might be more to the nature of, okay, we've got this blue screen of death with this error message. What exactly do we need to do to fix that on the technical side? And so, and you can have multiple different collections with different categories and subcategories and different forms to allow you to put together your library the way you want. Most knowledge bases will also allow you to do PDF or other documents attached into your knowledge documents. And so think about it as a very robust single source, especially around how does your IT products work. I hope you can also see how, as a business analyst or doing the business analysis work, it might be useful to see what known problems, which are also captured in the knowledge management database, they come from problem management, but now you're able to look at that, especially if you're looking at a continuous improvement product or if you're looking at a brand new product as a replacement product. You're going to deal with change management in some way, shape, or form as you're doing the project itself, and there are changes to the scope or to the requirements after it's designed or semi-designed. You're going to take it back through a governance process of change management. In the IT world, that's one level of change management. There's also change management that has to be done during the design within the developers grouping in the way that, whichever way they're running it. Are they running it in an agile sprint? Are they running it completely waterfall? How are they doing their development work? And what is the governance around making changes to scope there? And then finally, it's ready to be released. We need to get a change window and the process of getting that release and ensuring it is not going to be impactful for other systems. And also to ensure that if this is an update to a product, it is not going to impact the operations of our business customer or our agency. So change management becomes very important with release management to minimize disruption and conflicts during anything being implemented into the production world. And when I say production, I mean into the world where people are using it. Let me take a look at that quick question. So if you are working on change management, you're integrating with other ITSM practices to reduce duplication of work. Yes, you absolutely are. And the big key, I think, from change management, when we look at it, is there other conflict? I had somebody actually say this to me when I was the change manager. They said, we're not going to impact any other system, so we can just deploy whenever. And I said, are you on an island? They went, no, we're in Portland. I said, do you need power to your servers to do the change? They went, yes. I said, so if the utility company is going to turn off power during your deployment, is that going to impact your deployment? Yeah, but they won't do that. Okay. How about network? That's coming through the state network, right? Yeah. I said, do you know whether or not the state is doing any work on their network that could impact you doing that remote upload? That won't happen. It's like, it could happen. And it turned out that we actually did a check to see, and it actually did happen to overlap where they would not have access to their servers. So they couldn't do the change when they wanted to do it. So it's trying to mitigate that risk of scheduling something, getting the resources available and not being able to do it. And at the same time, do we have the right processes to say, this is when I'm going to take down this system, make it not available, make my modification. Do I have enough time to test it? Or do I need to roll it back? So if I say that the service is being restored at 8 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, I need to restore the service or I have an incident. Now that means I should have rolled back early and retested the rollback if my change was unsuccessful before 8 o'clock. I hope that makes sense. Because our goal, if we're doing things from a perspective of how do we support our business to get their job done, is to ensure that we are not impacting what they need to do as the business service value provider to their customers. Otherwise, we're no longer we're not providing them the service and the value that they are really desiring. Just like us, we hate it when our computer goes down, right? It's down and you go, darn it, why is it doing that? Darn it, I got to restart the computer. I don't want to restart my computer. I want to keep working. None of us like any disruptions to what we want to get done, and that is definitely true with our customers. Request management, as you're doing builds or as you need things, you may need to request. A good example is you may need to request licenses for software. That would go through request management to an asset team to purchase that. So you're going to use request management in some way, shape, or form. And then finally, continual improvement. Once we've built something, we can't just assume it's going to last that way forever. We really should start that process of continual improvement. What do we already know that we can make better, that we've discovered and put onto our backlog? What is the customer telling us are their priorities for what they need for that next level of improvement? As we start to look at all these, and there's more, we could talk about this for a long time. As we start looking at all the different places, think about how your ITSM tool might actually be able to capture that information for you and even automate some of the workflows that you need to put in place. Great example, let's say that you have a mechanism where you have a series of, you put together a document, you need a series of approvals to say that's my final. You don't necessarily have to do that all by email. You could actually do a workflow inside an ITSM tool to say, I'm putting in a request to get approval. It says, I need approval to this person. It gets the approval. And then it says, oh, now that's approved. I needed to go here. And it gets another approval. And now you have that all documented in one place. And you haven't had to send an email each time and go in and out of email to operate a process that can be optimized and automated. So I hope I've shared with you some different ways that you might be able to at least start thinking about, how can I use the ITSM tool? How can I really, how much of what you probably do is already in the ITSM space, but you may have never thought about it as part of IT service management, because BAs are an essential part of IT service management. We cannot do the work without the business analysis and people who are trained in business analysis, nor plus we need that project management too because of the complexity. All of this from an ITSM perspective incorporates 36 different practices. If you are working somewhere on a project that includes IT, you are probably doing ITSM, and we are most likely almost always aligned. So at that, the key for us all is when we align with each other, we can create whole new worlds. There's nothing we can't do together. and I'm ready to take some questions, and I hope I've been helpful and given you some insights and thoughts. Or thank you for the applause. Is there any questions? Something I can answer, something, it doesn't even have to be germane to this, some questions about IT just in general, or experience that I might be able to share with you. Ask away.
And folks, feel free to unmute, maybe even turn on your camera and ask Mark any questions that you might have. While they're thinking, Mark, thank you for this. For me personally, I work in an organization that's considered an IT shop, but we really don't do much IT specific type work there. But this has still been eye-opening for me to think we should still be thinking of our work this way and operating under these same principles of the ITSM and the ITIL principles. So thank you. This has been great.
You're
I
quite
can't wait to
welcome.
use some of your PDF slides as I talk to folks at work.
Absolutely. And if I can be of assistance, you all have my contact information. You should feel free to reach out. That's part of why I'm here. It's actually even in my job description to assist other agencies in the accomplishment of IT service management. Julie.
Awesome. And before we
Oh,
get
sorry,
to
go ahead.
Julie, Mark, there was a question in the chat that I think we can hit real quick first, maybe from
Sure. What
Nicole.
would you do if you're having a hard time obtaining business requirements from a team because they are simply too busy? Huh. That is a very hard one. Generally, there are several different ways you can go about it, but here's how I tend to go about that, because that's common. I work with the manager of that area to schedule the meeting and do it at the team manager's discretion of the time. That way the team manager can set priorities for their employees being there. And then we have to do it. I would suggest if you're not doing it as a facilitated conversation, if you're just trying to get them to give you the business requirements, by setting a meeting, being there and facilitating it might be helpful, especially if the manager has set the time, because now you can say, do you have everybody you think needs to be here for the business requirements? And once they've signed off on the business requirements, you can go. Otherwise, you can get hung up forever.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Julie?
More just a comment. I've been at ODOT for 2 years, kind of new in tech and data, where the business and the IT piece kind of comes together a little bit. But before coming to ODOT, I spent a bunch of years in marketing, and I just loved your bit about knowing your customer and how important that is across the board, no matter what we're doing, and having that customer people-centric view. I feel like it gets lost a little bit in the tech and data world or in the IT world when it is just so important to being able to provide a service that works for them. So I just wanted to thank you for that reminder, because it brought back all my, marketing years.
You're quite welcome. I got very lucky. I came into e-commerce in a period of time. 2003, I joined a company in e-commerce, and it was a used textbook company at a time when that was a growing sector, and we were one of the first. And we started diversifying, and we had 100,000 square feet here in Salem. We had over 2.5, 3 million books at any one time, 4 turns of that warehouse. And that opportunity actually got me to a place where I got to sit down with Jeff Bezos in his office. I got to sit down with Meg Whitman as the head of eBay in her office.
Nice.
Because I was in the right space, and I learned from a lot of these other individuals and Microsoft. The individual I was talking about was a Microsoft acquisitions merger person who then went into private consulting. Know your customer, know your customer, know your customer.
Yep.
Those opportunities broaden your ability to think about IT from so many different realms. And being in e-commerce, really focused me on how do you use IT to be customer centric, because you live and die by those ratings, right? If I need my $34 million to come in a year, I need to make sure I'm a 4-star, 5-star site. And anybody that doesn't give me that, I need to rectify and do customer recovery. And so we looked for all those different ways of ensuring we really understood the customer, because we live and die by them, especially in private sector.
Absolutely.
There was another question in chat. Any general advice or tips for working with change adverse teams with limited resources? Are you referring to just any type of change? Or changing what they need to do and it adds, yes, that was on South Pringle, BookBite. But that change question is, are we talking about people who are afraid of changing how they work, what they work, or any change is uncomfortable and they push back? So my advice there is keep in mind that most people are uncomfortable with change, mostly from a perspective that it is going to consume their time. And so one of the things that we have to think about, or that I recommend that we think about when we're trying to affect change, is how do we make sure to, and this is going to be a little bit of marketing, how do we market that what we are about to do is good for them? We need to make them the stakeholder, the impacted party who sees the value. Anybody heard of, what is it, WIFM? What's in it for me? You've got to make them see a benefit for them to want the change. So sometimes you have to slow down a little bit, work with them to ask you for the change, or to at least buy into that they would like a little change. And don't try to change too much. The more risk adverse somebody is, or change adverse, the slower you have to go. And you can build momentum up with people as they see more and more value, and they build trust that it is going to bring them value versus just time. I hope that helps. There's not a really good way. There are people who are just always going to be change resistant. And keep in mind that the number of people who are going to be your early adopters, late adopters, and are going to be in the middle as adopters are going to be on that bell curve. 10% of the people, no matter what, are going to hate everything you do and are not going to want to do the change. Just keep that in mind. I'm building a system right now for 28,000 people. I expect 2,800 people are absolutely going to hate everything we've done, even if everybody else loves it. Let's see. Not a IT. Yeah, I love the W. Yeah, what's in it for me really, really works. I want to make sure I'm capturing everything. Thank you for buying books from us. That was a lot of fun at that time. Personnel to affecting change. How do they do what they... And is that pronounced Tejal? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Awesome. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, Tejal. Yes.
And then let's see, what do we got next? I'm not in IT, and even though ITSM comes from the IT world, I see some prints. Absolutely. I think what's really important about ITSM is you could drop the IT off of it. If you think about a lot of things I just talked about, it's really about service management and how do you provide, whether you're using an IT solution or you use anything else. We could take these same concepts and apply them to building a building without any IT. And so you're very much right. There are some things very specific to IT when it comes to like service delivery life cycles or building life cycles and development operations. But in a lot of cases, it is very transferable to other types of industry, because service management of itself doesn't really change if we're trying to really deliver good service. Sometimes IT and business areas can feel like us versus them. It can be harder too, because it feels like we at IT have more power, and some people like that power. Yep. And any advice on creating collaborative culture instead of us, them culture? Yes. So we always want to try and break that down. So the key becomes to become, this is my suggestion, it's a little bit harder to do. So the more you include and let the them become the us, so that you're thinking about how do you incorporate them, or the people who are thinking of themselves as them. If you've got a leader that is thinking us, them, that's very difficult. That's systemic change. That how do you break down that silo? If it's some people feeling that they're not being included, and therefore it's an us, them, then by doing inclusion and transparency, it changes the flavor. And again, that takes a little bit of time. So what I tend to do, giving you a great example, so we're doing this transition. I got ready to build the service offering for one of our business units that already has it in our previous tenant or our current tool. I didn't make the assumption that they didn't want to make improvements. I invited them to the design session, said, hey, we're getting ready to do design sessions. Would you like to have a design session about your service offering and get a chance to work with our consultant? Because it's really your consultant, but would you like to work with the consultant to redesign or modernize what you currently have? They went, could we? Absolutely. So we brought them in with the whole project team. We treated them just like we would treat our project team. They got full access. They got full ability to communicate and act as part of it. So we created an us. There was no them. And when you get that, you've got to create that purposefully by thinking if you were on the other side of the them side, what would you want the us to do to make you feel included? So it's an inclusion exercise. I hope I answered that question well enough to give you some ideas. It's hard sometimes because you got to know the exact circumstance you're in. What are the players? How do they feel? And you have to look at it from what is their motivator that can bring them to you so that you can get rid of that wall. And the other thing is to remember, none of us like things done to us. So if in your decision making you say, I'm just going to do this for them, or they just need to do it this way, as soon as you've gone there, you've created that separation. Even if you think there's a better way, bring them options and let them make some choices. Try not to be so paternal that we get locked into, it's got to be our way. It's easy to do, and especially in the security area, we want to secure everything, but the business needs to take the risk of what is their security appetite, what is their security tolerance, their risk tolerance, what is the agency tolerance that their agency director is willing to accept, so that we don't create that friction between the security need and the business operation. That's not ours as the IT or the BA to do. That's the business leader to make that decision. They take on that responsibility. So we can give them options, good advice, and now we become a resource that's part of an us. Hope that helped as well. Other questions, thoughts?
All right, Mark, I'm not seeing any other questions for you, so great job. And I love it
Thank
when
you.
we have time for Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and take the screen share back from you, though,
Absolutely.
because I've got a slide about our next Bang Forum in August. For those of you that have been with Bang for quite a while, you will recognize Rebecca Craven's name on there. We have gotten her to agree to come back to do another business case forum for us. I think we're going to go all the way back to her typical part 1 of how to write business cases. I can't remember the title of it right now, but I think that's what she's preparing for us in August. So that'll be great. I think we're trying to time it with everybody preparing business cases for the next budget cycle so that we're kind of getting ahead of the game on that so that everybody can get those done in time. Also have information on here for the upcoming PMUG session For those of you that like to attend PMUG and Bang, they've been having some issues with their mailing list and things, so please bear with them. Email Amy directly if you have any questions, or just ping us at Bang and we'll get a hold of somebody over there to help you out if you need the link to their event or anything like that. But they are having a couple of folks, one from OHA and one from DEQ, coming to their July meeting to talk about environmental justice mapping tool and the project that they were working on for that. So please plug in. Plenty of opportunities for that, as you can see. And thank you all for attending our Bang Forum. And thanks again, Mark.
You're quite welcome. I'm getting ready to put the PDF of the presentation and my email into the chat, assuming
Awesome.
it lets me do it.
Yep. And then I will get that PDF up onto the Bang website as well, so that folks can go there and download that.
It's not giving
And
me
this-
the option to put it into,
No, it
could
might
be the
not
way
let
we're
you.
set up.
Yeah.
I'll send it over to you.
Okay. It'll get up onto our website, as well as the recording of this session will also hit our website pretty soon. Probably take a week or so for that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.